the ANC Subcommittee on Political Education in KwaZulu-Natal. And as usual, I will be facilitating this session. Special welcome to former President Mbeki, who has joined our session today. Welcome to you, Comrade President. And welcome.
Thanks, Comrade.
Welcome to other NEC members who are here. We are beginning with our session, comrades. As usual, we start at 6 and finish at 8. There have been special requests that where there is a need, we may have to extend a bit in terms of the finishing time, but we'll be guided by the length of the presentation and the extent of discussions. So, comrades, today we are dealing with a very important topic on the reconfiguration of the alliance. As you know, comrades, that this has been a debate that has been going on for a couple of years now and remains unsettled. If I were to take it to the extreme, I may well say that it has also led, or probably led, to a decision by the South African Communist Party to contest the next local government elections. But as I say, this debate has not only been going on within the structures of the ANC and alliance partners, but it has also been a debate in the public discourse. And as a result, we thought that it is important that we also don't get left behind in that particular debate. And fortunately, we have 3 comrades who have penned down a discussion document, sort of a discussion document, as an intervention in the ensuing debate. And what is important about this document is that it gives basically the guide or a necessary intervention on this particular debate. And surely it will help us to avoid the day-to-day sound bites insofar as this important debate is concerned. Many people have obviously on both sides criticized each other, whether or not we do need a reconfigured alliance or it should continue as it is. And this discussion, we hope it will also make that necessary intervention in the ensuing debate. Some comrades have expressed a view that probably we should not have taken this debate on the public platform and allow it to be engaged internally. But the fact of the matter is that the debate, comrade, is out there. And if comrades are not able to engage in this debate, it will be engaged by those who are able to engage it and who are prepared to engage in public without the views of our comrades. But also comrades who are guided by what Comrade or Chairman Mao taught us, that we may ban the expression of wrong ideas, but the ideas will be there. Therefore, it is only by employing the method of discussion, criticism, and reasoning that we can really settle issues. Mistakes must be criticized and poisonous weeds fought wherever they crop up. We must carefully distinguish between what is a poisonous weed and what is a fragrant flower. And we hope this particular debate, comrades, will assist us to achieve exactly that. Now, without any further ado, comrades, the manner in which we are going to structure the discussion today is that we are going to have one of the 3 authors of this document that I have referred to lead us on the presentation. I think Comrade Mdumiseni Ntuli has been mandated to lead the discussion. But the co-authors is Comrade Mdumiseni Ntuli, Comrade Geraldine Fraser-Mleketi, and Comrade Linus Clarks. And I want also to welcome and recognize Comrade Geraldine as well as Comrade Lennox, who I advise are also part of the platform today. So when Comrade Mdumiseni finishes the presentation, we are going to invite the President, Comrade Thabo Mbeki, to then make his own remarks. And after that, the President will decide whether he wants to stay for the entire duration of this session, or he will be allowed to take leave at any convenient time he wishes to. But immediately after Comrade Mdumiseni, will invite Comrade President to make his own remarks, and we are grateful for that. And I want to make this yet another request, comrades. We remain muted. You will only unmute if you are recognized to speak. And I request the administrators of this platform to ensure that everyone is muted except the speaker on the platform. So, Comrade Tukelo, please make sure that you mute everyone. And if you can also share the hosting rights to Comrade Mdumiseni, as I'm advised that he will be using some slides so that it will be easy and convenient for him to do so. So if we can also mute everyone, we don't wish to have disruptions, comrades. Once again, welcome to all of you. And let me invite Comrade Mdumiseni to then take a lead. Over to you, Comrade Mdu.
Thanks, Comrade Chair. I don't know whether you can hear me loud and clear on your side.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. And thanks a lot. Good evening to you. Good evening to all comrades on the platform, and particularly to President Thabo Mbeki, as well as to the two comrades that we have worked on together on this document, Comrade Geraldine, as well as Comrade Lennox. Comrade Chair, please look at your phone. I forwarded to you a message from Comrade Geraldine because she requires the link to be sent via an email. She is currently struggling to enter using the passcode in a way that it has been circulated. So please attend to that matter. And Chair, with your permission, I'm going to have to close the video because I have to share my screen. And the system says, it says allow Zoom workplace to share your screen. So I hope I must say open the system. Okay, it has disappeared again. Let me share it again. Can you see it on your side, Comrade Chair?
No, I only see your name.
You can't see a presentation?
No.
Okay.
Only your name.
It's on my screen, but maybe I'm not sharing it in the right way. Let me go back. Share. And then after share, maybe I must go to desktop. And then it says open the system. You still can't see anything, Msheng?
No, nothing.
Still my name?
It's still your name.
Mm.
Comrade Tukel, are you able to make any intervention?
Yeah, can you
Tukelo?
help?
Yes, Comrade Mshengu. uComrade umuntu angayivula nje eceleni idocument mase sethi ku-share aye mayeqeda ukuklikha u-share aye kwi-iCloud Drive or uzokwazi ukuthi ayibone idocument ivulekile noma angayisenda ku-WhatsApp sikwazi ukuthi simbhimele sihambe kanye naye.
Okay, because what it's doing, Katlego, Tukelo, when I go to share, it leads me to another page that says allow Zoom Workplace to share your screen, cancel open system settings. When I open system settings, the documents appears on my screen, but Mshengu says he can't see it on his side.
Can I request Comrade Mdu that
Mthemba
you
ayenze Mthemba.
yeah, you send it to us, we'll send it to Tukelo immediately while you do your preliminary remarks.
Okay, let me just email now.
Can we request Mondli Sangweni to mute, please?
Exactly the track no more system.
I think this one.
Comrade Mdu, are you winning? Comrade Mdumiseni?
Yes, Mshengu, I've sent it to you. Can you please open it on your side or send it via WhatsApp to Tukel? But I've sent it to you now.
Do you
I
have
didn't have
that
Tukel.
side?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I haven't received your document.
On your email, just check your email. I'll send it to you.
Are you sure we have data? It has not
That's why
come.
I'm on the screen.
Aren't you able to send it via WhatsApp?
Tukel, what's your email address as well?
Okay, I've got it. Can you
Yes.
put it while I will send it to Amanda and Tukel?
Okay, the problem of the data was on your side.
You can continue in the meantime, Comrade Mdu.
Okay, no, thanks, Comrade Chair. As long as you can hear me, because I was making with my screen here, it has disappeared, but as long as you can hear me. No, thank you very much, Comrade Chair. I think you have already laid the foundation in terms of explaining where we come from with the presentation I'm about to make. We decided, the three of us, that in the light of the ongoing discussion in the movement, which I think intensified following the Special National Congress of the Communist Party in December last year, we decided that let's work on a discussion document and not a perspective, but a discussion document which must be very broad, which to a very larger extent must also trace the history of the alliance, while also looking at the historical role of the Communist Party and the African National Congress, respectively. So we felt that it's going to be important that a contribution like that is made in order to contribute to the discussions in the movement, but also to contribute in the discourse in general in our country. Because in many respects, this discussion has not been taking place in a way that has allowed comprehensive interventions by various role players. So then we decided, let's work on this document because it will be part of the contribution into that discussion. And about 2, if not 3 months ago, we also shared the document with the ANC Secretary General, because it was our considered view that even as we will engage comrades and structures of the organization in general, it is also helpful that the document should be made available to the leadership of the organization. So what we are opening on your screen, Mshengu, is essentially the main document, which I've emailed to you, but I also emailed to you the slides, which I'm presenting. Document is fine, but I sent you the slides as well, which is what I'm going to be going through. And I think you can share the document with the comrades as and when.
Comrade Mdu, the slides have not come through. It's only
Okay.
this.
Okay, I'm sure it will come, because I had sent that document first and then followed by the slides on your both emails, on your Gmail as well and your work email.
Okay.
So comrades, in the first slides, what we're saying is that in December 2024, the Communist Party reaffirmed its call for the alliance reconfiguration. We're saying it reaffirmed its call because this is essentially has been a discussion, as I said earlier on, that has been taking place in the movement for quite some times now. There was a time 6 years ago where the ANC itself produced a document as part of its own response to what the Communist Party was proposing about the reconfiguration of the alliance. So the ANC's input reflecting on the view of the ANC about where do we come from with this alliance, what are the challenges we've confronted over the past 30 years of our democracy. At that time, it would have been 25 or 20 years. And how do we respond to them in a way that is going to reassert the role of the alliance? So we're starting there, but in December last year, the Communist Party reaffirmed that position, and it further resolved to contest the elections independently. And unlike in the past, in this case, very particular, that was starting with the 2026 local government elections. And I think even before we could start the preparations in earnest for the local government elections, the SACP decided to have a candidate in Polokwane on a by-election. I think it was in Ward 13 of Polokwane local municipality, where they decided to put up a distinct Communist Party candidate to contest that by-election, which in our own view was an indication of their determination to ensure that they introduce the decision. They are starting to implement the decision in earnest even before we get into the 2026 local government elections. So we are saying this therefore marks a historic shift which raises fundamental questions about the future of the alliance. Because if the Communist Party takes a position like that, we have to examine the implication of that position in terms of what we have understood and still understand as the alliance, and the implication of that into the future. Because the alliance has long been central to Africa's liberation and the South African journey of transformation since 1994. Now, in terms of the historical development, Comrade Chair, we are pointing out that, as we all know, the alliance partners has historically been the ANC, the Communist Party, and COSATU, and of course later on joined by SANCO, originated in the struggle against apartheid and colonialism. And in that context, with the ANC historically not only regarded but accepted as the principal leader of the National Democratic Revolution. And of course, we want to also indicate that when you look at the discussion document of the Communist Party, including the political overview presented by its General Secretary in the December Special National Congress, the SACP seems to trace the roots in terms of their own view. They are tracing the roots of the alliance from the resolutions that were taken in 1928 by the Committee, the Communist International. And they are saying in their own opinion, and that is written down in their document. When comrades are reading at the actual document, we are going to see what I'm making reference to. Because in this case, I'm just going to point to specific areas, not reading the whole resolution. But what the Communist Party is saying, is contending, is that that resolution essentially is the one that directed the formation of the alliance between the ANC and the Communist Party. And our contention, which I want to introduce right from the onset, is that we do not agree with that perspective of the Communist Party. In our own view, and we're arguing it in the document, that is essentially a misrepresentation of the understanding of what the Committee meant in terms of its resolutions and how it directed the Communist Party of South Africa at that time, because it wasn't yet the South African Communist Party, but it was the Communist Party of South Africa, and how it directed the CPSA and not the ANC on how it must work with the African National Congress. And we will indicate later on that in reality, the formation of the alliance, the expression of the formation of the alliance in the way we know and understand it now, essentially began to take root in the early 90s and maybe got consolidated further after 1994. Now, the point we're making, Comrade Chair, in that is that in that resolutions of the Committee, which I have referred to, what was argued in that resolution by the Communist Party, Communist International Party, the Committee, was that the South African Communist Party, which is the Communist Party of South Africa at that time, has to work with the ANC because the ANC at that time was and still remain the only organization that was central to the struggle against colonialism and later on apartheid after 1948. So the essence of that resolution, which the Communist Party concluded, was essentially a directive to form the alliance with the ANC. We are arguing that that resolution of the Communist Committee was essentially intended to say to the Communist Party of South Africa, you can't start leading a struggle for socialism without having attained liberation from colonialism, which was the case at that time, in apartheid later on after 1948. So the reason why that resolution was pointed to the Communist Party of South Africa was to say to the Communist Party, it will be in your best interest as communist that you work with and support the effort of the African National Congress, and colonialism and later on apartheid, as we know, has been defeated, the conditions will be laid for the Communist Party to pursue a socialist revolution. And that was not in our view. We're contending that the Communist Party used to argue that, in fact, that is indicated in their own documents. They are arguing that that directive, which was directed to them, was essentially a directive which marks the beginning of the alliance between the Communist Party of South Africa and the African National Congress. And our contention is that that cannot be the case, because the committee could not give a directive to the African National Congress. It only gave a directive to the Communist Party of South Africa on the basis of their own understanding of the material conditions in South Africa. and the need to ensure that there must be an attainment of what was called a Black Republic in South Africa before you can begin as the Communist Party in earnest to deal with the question of the socialist revolution. And we're also making references, Comrade Chair, to that was not only an issue or a problem facing South Africans or the Communist Party of South Africa. It's the same issue that Marx and Engels spent a lot of time discussing when they were dealing with the Irish question. In the main, they were focusing on two issues. The first one was the liberation of Ireland from English colonialism, and the second one was the colonization of Ireland and the struggle for the British workers for socialism. Again, the intervention that was made by Marx and Engels in that context was essentially putting this perspective in the similar way that was argued by the Committee in 1928, 1929, that unless the British working class intervenes and work together to liberate Ireland, it will be impossible for themselves to also begin in earnest to lead a struggle towards a socialist revolution. So you've got to deal with colonialism and have it defeated. And once that has been done, new conditions will emerge, which will then allow you to engage in a meaningful way with the struggle for socialism. So we're making that point, Comrade Msheng, and we're also emphasizing another point which emphasizes this position, because our contention is that this is not necessarily an exclusive position which was directed to the Communist Party of South Africa. It has to do with the theoretical understanding of communists about under what circumstances and conditions
has put together.
you may be
So
able
we
to
have
a struggle for socialism. And we're making reference again to another point which was made by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels when they were talking about democracy in the 1848 Communist Manifesto, where they say, and I quote, the first step in the revolution by the working class is to raise the proletariat to the position of the ruling class to win the battle for democracy. And Engels further made the point later on when he was reflecting on the class struggle in France, where he emphasized the importance of winning what he calls universal suffrage of democracy as one of the first and important tasks that the communists must pursue. In addition to that, we're also making references to what Vladimir Lenin said on democracy, and that is what was even later on in 1905, on the document that I think many comrades who are reading on the Communist Party literature would not be able to read without having seen it, titled Two Tactics of Social Democracy in the Democratic Revolution. In that document, Lenin makes an observation that, and I quote, he says, whoever wants to reach socialism by a different road other than that of political democracy will inevitably arrive at conclusions that are absurd and rational, both in the economic and political sense. Now, in a way, what Lenin was saying here was a continuation of the perspective that was articulated by both Marx and Engels. And we're arguing that this is a consistent view of the Marxist, that a democratic republic is the nearest approach to the dictatorship of the proletariat. And we're making this point, as I said, Comrade Mshengu, right from the beginning, because we want to engage and dispel the notion, which we believe it's a wrong understanding, which is contained on the various documents that the Communist Party has produced, that essentially the alliance between the Communist Party of South Africa and the ANC started in 1928, and that when that committent a conference gave a directive to the Communist Party of South Africa, it actually heralded the formation of the alliance, and which implies that, because that position implies that this particular directive to the Communist Party of South Africa is also by extension, a directive to the African National Congress, and was saying that could not have been the case because the African National Congress was by no means accountable to the Communist Party, the International Communist Party, as it would be the case with the Communist Party of South Africa. We also want to pick up on what should be understood as the role of the ANC and the role of the Communist Party. And in this case, we are saying the ANC is the principal leader, as I said, of the National Democratic Revolution, as I indicated earlier on. And that position is equally supported, we want to argue, by the very same 1928 Committee resolution, where it refers and identifies the ANC as a national liberation movement.
Has Comrade Mdu gone off, or is it on my side?
Yeah, it's many of us.
I think it's him.
Comrades, I think it's all of us. We can't hear the Kehida. May the matter be attended to, please.
Thanks. Let me try locate him.
Please, leader. I think it's a network problem.
Please locate him, Google.
Comrade, if we can bear with him for a moment, he is rejoining. I think he was kicked out by the problem of network. Thanks.
Notice, leader, we're patiently waiting.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we are back now. We can proceed.
Okay. Where did I get cut? Where did I get cut so that I can go back there? Mshengu?
1928 resolution.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. Yeah, I was saying, comrades, I was dealing with the role of the ANC and the role of the Communist Party. And the point I was making there is that essentially the ANC has been and remains the principal lead of the National Democratic Revolution. You'll understand later on when I explain why it would therefore not make sense to have the Communist Party in a way making a demand that requires them to co-govern the NDR. I'll come back to this question later on. But I was also saying that this position has also been recognized, as you will see when you read the main document, that even the very same 1928 Comintern resolution refers to and identifies the ANC as a national liberation movement. And therefore, its strategic task being the emancipation of the oppressed from the national oppression. Because what flows from the characterization that we're a national liberation movement is therefore what becomes our strategic response, our tasks. And one of those major tasks, fundamental one, is the emancipation of the oppressed from the national oppression. And with a fundamental responsibility to establish what we can call a native republic as a stage towards a workers' and a peasant republic. Now, the next, the continuation of what we want to deal with around the role of, and then on the contrary, the role of the Communist Party and the strategic task of the Communist Party is class emancipation. The emancipation of the working class from domination and exploitation by the capitalist class and the organizing for the veto of the socialist revolution remains principal responsibilities of the Communist Party. They were the same for the Communist Party of South Africa. They remain as such, even with the South African Communist Party. And we want to underline the fact that nowhere on the resolution of the Comintern resolutions, nowhere is the SACP directed to displace or to take the role of the ANC in terms of being a leadership responsible for the National Democratic Revolution. And it's important to underline this point because what we have understood in the interventions of the Communist Party, for instance, is an argument that says the alliance must be a strategic political center, which has a responsibility to guide, to lead, and direct the National Democratic Revolution in a way which is a call to create a sovereign organization called the alliance, where both the ANC, the Communist Party, and maybe also COSATU and SANCO meet together and be something else, uniquely, that takes a responsibility for the National Democratic Revolution. Now, the position of the SACP, as I was saying, on the reconfiguration, comrades, firstly has to do with the call for a strategic political center of the NTR. Secondly, the Communist Party says in its own documents that it seeks to integrate socialist goals within the NTR. And of course, as we all are familiar with, it gives a critiques of the ANC-led policies as neoliberal and insufficient and not being able to take the revolution into the direction that in the view of the South African Communist Party, it has to go to. As a consequence of this unhappiness with the status quo, then the Communist Party has taken a decision that they are going to contest elections and to do so on the wall-to-wall from the 26 local government elections, which essentially, as you can see, it will be some kind of breaking with the ANC in terms of in ANC electoral unit, when the SACP decide that because we're unhappy that we are not, as an alliance, a strategic political center, and we're not happy that the socialist goals are not integrated in the NTR, and we're not happy that the ANC seems to be leading policies that are gravitating towards what is called neoliberal. We are therefore taking a decision that we ourselves are going to now enter into the contest and win elections. Now, what becomes some of the points of contentions here, comrades, is that the ANC asserts the leadership of the NTR, which has got the responsibility to lead. And unfortunately, on the other side, as I was saying earlier on, the Communist Party is advocating for a scenario where the alliance assumes some form of sovereignty, where decisions are going to be made by the alliance. And of course, one is in this contest is that both the ANC and the Communist Party are two distinct organizations with their leadership, their structures, and they convene, take decisions on their own, and have an obligation to implement their own decision. Now, when you say the leader of the NTR must not be the one that leads the NTR on the basis that it must now be a new formation, a kind of sovereignty, what then becomes the implications of the resolutions that were taken by the ANC? What you say to ANC structures and ANC conference decisions, which, because the ANC does not have a responsibility to pursue a socialist revolution, it has absolutely no responsibility whatsoever towards the attainment of a socialist revolution. It's not a socialist organization. It's a multi-class formation which has a responsibility to lead the National Democratic Revolution. Now, when you say there must be a different entity that must deal with the execution of the National Democratic Revolution, what are the implications on what historically has been understood, that these are allies but who are independent, take their own decisions independently, elect their own leadership respectively, and meet only at the point at which they deal with matters of common interest in the advancement of the struggle to eradicate, in our case since 1994, the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. Now, if the Communist Party says we want to merge some socialist aspect of the revolution into the NTR, what becomes the substance of that, and what becomes the content of that, and what are the implications of that in the context of what the Communist Party represents and what the ANC stand for? How do we practically give expression to that position in terms of the policy formulation, implementation, and the orientation of our policies? Because as I indicated earlier on, comrades, the ANC program is based on a task of building a democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and a united and a prosperous South Africa. That is a fundamental task that the ANC has a responsibility to achieve. But the Communist Party is arguing that in terms of what they are saying, this must be in a way superseded by a socialist-oriented program of action. Will that still be a national democratic revolution when its orientation is purely socialist? Because the Communist Party needs to infuse into the NTR and possibly change the NTR to represent the socialist orientation. What would be the meaning of that in terms of what the ANC stand for and in terms of the content of the National Democratic Revolution? And of course, the attended risk to these comrades, which we are raising in a discussion document, is that to a very larger extent, it communicates a message, a negative message about what the Communist Party perceives and believes of the ANC leadership and its ability to lead the National Democratic Revolution. And we are of the view that it cannot be the way in which allies must relate to one another, where the extent to which there is a commitment to influence one another reaches a point where the influence must go beyond engaging and agreeing tactically on how to achieve certain objectives, but on a strategic agenda to inform and influence the NTR to assume what is called a socialist kind of a trajectory towards the revolution, a socialist revolution. Because as I indicated earlier on, the ANC does not have a mandate to take a position like that. And of course, other point of contention that emerged, as I referred to earlier on, for instance, the Communist Party, part of the motivation that is informing the position of the SACP on various issues, there are references to the discussion document of the Communist Party to what they call, in fact, this is in various documents, it's not just one, what they refer to as working class. And the question arises, what is it that is understood by all of us, not just the communists in our country, as a true meaning of what is called a working class hegemony? Will we be in the position to demonstrate that practically through some manifestation that we are moving towards or have reached a stage at which we can say there is working class hegemony in South Africa? We're going to make reference to some of the issues that, in our own view, communicate a contrary message from the idea that we may be anywhere closer or gravitating successfully towards what is called a working class hegemony in South Africa. And of course, we do want to bring to your attention, Chair, that ordinarily, this assertion should be associated with what is called in the Communist Manifesto. What the Communist Manifesto talks about, which is what is called the formation of the proletariat into a class. The formation of the proletariat into a class, which essentially means a proletariat for itself. I'll come back to this issue to distinguish what is meant by, to give an explanation of what is meant by a proletariat, formation of the proletariat into a class and a proletariat for itself. But that is a fundamental issue theoretically in the Marxist perspective, to understand how will a society gravitate towards what is defined as a working class hegemony. Because if theoretically we're not on the same page on that, we may be confusing the Communist Party, what may be a Communist Party hegemony, if anything of that nature will exist, with a working class hegemony. And in our view, as we argue in the discussion document, that we don't see that this point is properly supported by evidence in terms of the conditions of the working class in South Africa. We are of the view that of course, we accept the fact that, comrades, the working class in South Africa, there's no doubt that the working class in South Africa played a major role and a strategic role, for that matter, to defeat apartheid. There's no doubt about that, they were engaged in that struggle over the years, right from the formation of the ANC until the attainment of a democratic breakthrough in 1994. There's no question about the role and the place of the working class in that struggle. But we must understand that in a particular context, that that militance of the proletariat in our country to defeat colonialism and to defeat apartheid was a militant proletariat in itself rather than a proletariat for itself. And I'm coming back to this concept I was referring to earlier on, the formation of the proletariat into a class and the proletariat for itself. Now I'm saying, when the working class was engaged in the struggle in South Africa, that struggle they were engaged on, they did so as a proletariat in itself, rather than a proletariat for itself. For instance, let me give you some examples of why we say we don't think we're anywhere in terms of what the Communist Party define or characterize as the working class hegemony, or anywhere closer to that position. For instance, if you look at the membership of the SACP, just as a basic example, there are many other methods through which you can evaluate what I'm talking about, but just look at the membership of the Communist Party in our country. That membership of the Communist Party, as it stands, as was reported in their National Congress in December last year, is very much weak in terms of its composition of the working class. Its composition is very weak. It's not demonstrating a huge base of the working class. And that is what was reported by the SACP in their own documents, which I'm sure all of us can find on the internet or in the way, yes, on the website of the Communist Party. For instance, at the national level, the report of the SACP itself says about 16% at the national level of the membership of the Communist Party is the working class. And if you look at the three biggest provinces, we just have 10% of the working class. In the Eastern Cape, we've got 12% of the working class. In Gauteng, is also around 12% of the working class. Now, there are implications for that, comrades, if you have to pursue, because our view is that the Communist Party cannot see its own role as the National Democratic Revolution. It cannot. In fact, I want to make the point, which is not necessarily on the slides, and I remember in the National Executive Committee of the ANC, we discussed this matter, to say that of what Marx and Engels have said about the need for the formation of the Black Republic in the context of South Africa, or the Native Republic, as in some instances it was referred to. When in 1994, the democratic, immediately after the 1994 democratic breakthrough, essentially and theoretically, there was no reason, theoretical. Politically, there were reasons, I would imagine. Some of us were very young at that time. We may have not been, we were not involved, except reading about it the reasons why this has happened. But theoretically, if you follow the logic of what Marx and Engels presented, theoretically there was no reason after 1994 why the Communist Party should not immediately start organizing, including where necessary, contest elections to move to the next revolution, which is a socialist revolution. I'm saying theoretically, comrades, there was no reason. There are no basis theoretical. Politically, yes, it may very well be that there are reasons politically. The argument may be advanced that it was just after the 1994 breakthrough, leadership would have been conscious about the need to ensure that the forces that work together to bring about this change remain united, even in the implementation of the National Democratic Revolution. There's nothing wrong with that. And
it seems we have lost Comrade Ntuli again. We'll try and indicate to him.
Comrade Chair, I think you have to phone him so you can disconnect him over the phone. Thank you so much.
And by that, I'm saying, woman.
Impela kazanyo ngedatha.
While sisamlindile comrades, is it possible ukuthi singathola this document mhlambe siyi-download somewhere? Ukulinda kodwa solinda.
Supported.
Comrades, is rejoining. We apologize for that. We will request comrades that from the authors, if they would permit, I'm sure, that the document be circulated, obviously in public, for
Yeah,
comrades.
the document can be circulated.
Can be circulated.
I'm not sure, yeah, whether there's a chat group of all the comrades that are on this particular Mkhabulo session, so that we can get it to all of them.
Okay. Now, thanks, Comrade Geraldine. I think the comrades who are helping us from the provincial office are noting the emails that are on the chat box. Then we'll forward the documents to all those emails. Thanks so much for that indication, Comrade Geraldine.
Sanibonani comrades, ngingazuphazamisa sihlalo. Sengiyi-attachile i-document lapha kuma-chats.
Oh, okay. So comrades can then surely download it from or upload it from the chat box. Let me try again, Comrade Mdumiseni. Comrade is requesting a minute. Comrade Mdumiseni is changing the gadgets. So if we can bear with him just for a minute.
No, it's fine, solinda sihlalo, but umuntu uyacela nokuthi document must be sent to ama-emails esiwafakile, because one akayitholi la kuma-chat box, but sizoqhubeka sisana.
The document is there. I was able to save it from the shares. I think if you can continue trying, you'll find it there.
Greetings, comrades. I don't know if I'm being out of order. Can you please also share the link to the group chat that was it was indicated earlier on that there's a group chat that you share some of this information as like invitations and documents. If possible, can you please share the link of the group chat so that you can also join? Because I got it from a separate group chat. Thanks.
Comrade Chair, kancane nje. Umfowethu lo ufuna ukungena egroupini, which group ekefuna ukungena kuyona, because we have 4 groups ezakwa ANC lana esinawo la. Angibonge.
Comrades, we'll take that discussion offline, please. The issue of groups and all that, so that we don't divert the attention of this session. The document will be shared as widely as we can. Comrade Tukelo indicates that it is indeed on the chat box. So if Comrade can try to upload it from, or rather download it from there. Thanks. Comrade Tukelo, can you accept Comrade Mdumiseni? Comrade Tukelo?
Yes, comrades Mshego, akakaveli lapha kuyi-waiting room. But ngiyigadile ngizom-accept uma ingena.
Are you in now?
In now.
Yes, I think I'm
Guys,
accepting
in.
now.
Okay,
Okay.
then proceed.
No, thanks, Chair. I don't know what sabotage is this. No, comment together. I was on slide. I was on slide 12. You can even go to slide 13. That will be fine. So I was saying, Comrade Chair, on slide 12, that's why I was explaining the issue about the membership of the Communist Party in terms of its composition, and whether or not that gives us a sense of anything we can call a consolidation towards what is called a working class base in our country. And of course, the next slide talks about the criticism. If you go to the next slide, we are making the point there that where the problem of the Communist Party becomes a major challenge in our view. The first one is a misrepresentation of history, because to argue that the 1928 Committee resolution actually established the alliance is not the case. If you read what is in those resolutions of that committee, there's nowhere where it makes references to the fact that this intervention we're making about the South African question, therefore, also begins the formation of what later on we understand, or we've come to understand as the tripartite alliance in our country. Of course, the other document that is usually quoted by the SACP as the basis upon which the ANC was in a way somehow endorsing, directly or indirectly, that the struggle in South Africa would first be about the NTR and later be about socialism, is the 1979 Green Book document. And I think comrades can read that. I'm not going to make reference to it. And of course, the last 2 points there is that, there's something that is hardly known, which as we're developing this document, we decided we need to investigate because it has been a contentious issue in the discourse in the movement. And only to discover that this matter has not been properly known and understood by all of us in the organization. When the ANC adopted the policy on gear, which it has always been argued, even in conferences of the ANC, various interventions that were made by President Mandela and others that were made by President Mbeki, that this policy position essentially originated from the demands that and the directive that is in the RDP, the Reconstruction and Development document, which was adopted as the policy position of the movement when we took over government. What is hardly known or has not been publicized is the fact that actually when the Communist Party, the Communist Party initially responded to GEAR, and we've put that in the document I've sent to you, Msheng, which you can share on social media and everywhere with comrades. The SACP actually released a statement in which it accepted and welcomed GEAR as the Communist Party. And the statement is there, and it indicates why it does so. And of course, later on, subsequent to that, as we all know, I think what is known now, the popular position that has been understood by many of us, especially those of us who are young in the movement, is that the Communist Party never really accepted GEAR. It has denounced it right from the beginning. Now, the danger with that position is that when you go deeper into history, you pick that up, that actually there was a statement of the Communist Party. And I would imagine that the SACP leadership then recognized the fact that that policy position was necessitated by what the RDP, what the RDP document had said about what you need to do in terms of the economy. You need to grow the economy. You need to engage in a redistribution of that economy. But there would be a recognition as you move along that you can't continue to redistribute something that is not growing. What do you do to respond to that deficiency in your process? Hence, the question about the GEAR and what it was intended for arose. Whether it achieved all its intended objectives, we can debate that. There would be different views about whether or not it achieved what it was intended to achieve. But that it was a necessary instrument, that was equally recognized by the Communist Party itself. Why the SACP changed radically as it did, and including attacking it in a way in which it was attacked, I think it's a matter that we can all continue to interrogate as we reflect on who we are and where we come from as a movement. If you can go to the next slide, slide 14, the point that we're making there, Comrade Chair, that's the point I was making earlier on, that the Communist Manifesto talks about the formation of the proletariat as a class. That's the point I was making earlier on when I was emphasizing the importance of the formation of the proletariat as a class, because that is what the Communist Manifesto actually talks about. And it brings me to what the movement, especially the socialist movement, has understood internationally, originating from Marx and Engels. And it distinguished the two in the following way, where it makes references to the proletariat in itself and the proletariat for itself. I made the point earlier on that the South African working class, no doubt that they were engaged in a very militant way in a struggle against colonialism and apartheid. And my contention, which we are making in the document, is that That engagement was essentially the engagement of the proletariat in itself, not the proletariat as a class. Because the proletariat in itself is because we belong to the working class and we're selling labor, and therefore this is how we are characterized as a proletariat in itself. But when you become a proletariat for itself, is the attainment of a particular level of consciousness, as a consequence of which you act together for your own interest. And that is why when we're making reference to the issue about what is called the working class hegemony, I briefly commented on the issues relating to our understanding of the South African proletariat, whether this proletariat, never mind how many of them are they, see themselves as a proletariat in itself, or as a proletariat for itself, which has gained a particular level of consciousness, as a consequence of which it is willing to take up the struggle to achieve a socialist revolution in our country. Now, this is important, Comrade Chair, because as I proceed to the next slide, Comrade Tuke, because if the SACP contest election as they will the SACP contest elections as a party of socialism or as a party of the NTR? These are some of the strategic questions that we've got to be seized with. If the Communist Party is contesting elections as a party of the NTR, who takes up a responsibility for a socialist revolution in our country? Aren't we going to end up in a situation where a new formation is going to emerge on the far left of the SACP, which will say, now that the SACP has ceased to see itself as a part of socialism, it is rather seeing itself as a part of the NTR that must be influenced with some socialist elements. We must then stand on our own and be the one who are the vanguard of the working class, and therefore having a responsibility to lead the struggle towards a socialist revolution. So this question that, the first question that arises there is, will that not be one of the dangers we're going to contend with? That a very ultra-left formation will emerge, which will say, as you all know now, South Africans, the Communist Party is part of government, but they are not part of government in order to implement a socialist revolution. They have assimilated themselves into the NTR and convincing themselves, and probably hardly South Africans, that this NTR has now been changed to represent, in terms of its character and content, a socialist revolution, and therefore a pathway towards a socialist revolution. So that is what the first question actually raises, which we've got to contend with as a movement. The second one is, whether can the alliance be reconfigured without weakening the ANC leadership? Is that possibility existing? Is the assertion that the NTR is not on track, the NTR is losing direction, the movement has adopted neoliberal policies, and all of those things that constitute the motivation of the South African Communist Party, are those not necessarily also communicating, probably unintentionally, a message that the ANC and the ANC leadership is no longer important and central to the attainment of the goals of the National Democratic Revolution? And of course, the other question that arises, should the SACP contest elections selectively instead of engaging on what is called a wall-to-wall contestation? What is meant by that, Comrade Mshengu, would be that, well, the SACP, for instance, could say, after 1994, the conditions now exist with the attainment of a native republic for us to begin in earnest to prepare for a socialist revolution. And therefore, what we're deciding to do is that we're going to contest these elections, but only at the level of the PR vote. I think one of the comrades in the NEC raised that issue, that why would the SACP, for instance, not take a position that we're contesting elections, but on a PR vote? And once we've attained whatever number that we're going to receive, we will then work with the ANC in the formation of the various councils. Why does the SACP, for instance, not take a position to say, where are we strong as a Communist Party? Where are we strong? And because we are strong in this particular province or in that locality, we want to contest that locality because our strength speaks for itself. Our contestation there is going to make us to succeed. But Comrade Chair, because if you contest wall to wall, it's a direct collusion with the African National Congress. It's inevitable that if the Communist Party does that, the ANC will have to take a position that the Communist Party must be seen and be understood as one of its own opponents in the quest to advance the ideals of the National Democratic Revolution. And once we place the SACP in that position, what then becomes the relationship? What are the implications of being in an alliance with an organization that you are engaged against one another in obviously what usually becomes a deadly contest to win votes on the ground, with all that has to be said and be done to defeat your own opponent? If the SACP takes this position and it implements it, because one of the things, comrades, that we need to accept as comrades in the ANC, and I'm sure also in the Communist Party, one is to respect the fact that the Communist Party is not a subcommittee of the ANC. It's a part on its own. It has the right and the authority to take decisions and implement them. And one of those decisions which we must accept and respect is that the Communist Party is going to contest elections in the local 2026 local government elections. But accepting that does not mean, as revolutionaries, we must not reflect on the implications. And when we reflect on the implications, we reflect and equally challenge the Communist Party to properly understand the position in which it is actually putting itself and the movement in general. Because, comrade, the great likelihood is that the Communist Party will contest the elections and probably be faced with the same outcomes as they were in the by-election that was held in Puluwan. If that by-election is anything to go by, it may very well be a replica of what happened throughout the country. What then happens in a situation like that? Of course, the immediate implication is that I want to argue that there are no people who are waiting somewhere in South Africa who will only stand up and go and vote because the Communist Party is contesting elections. We will be contesting with the same base as the Communist Party will contest the same base as the ANC. So the immediate implication is that it will have an impact on the support base of the ANC, in the same way that it will also have an impact on their own ability to win the elections, the local government elections, because the space at which they are contesting is the space at which the African National Congress is also located. What are the implications of that? And when we pose the question about implications, it is not intended to undermine a Congress resolution of the Communist Party, but to engage our own ally in a discussion that must help us to clarify our minds. For instance, how should the alliance evolve in the context of the GNU and the shifting political landscape? It's one of the questions that must be reflected upon by both the ANC as well as the Communist Party. I'm moving towards the end. You can move to the next slide, Comrade. Essentially, the question would be, will it be logical for the ANC to treat the SACP as an ally following a head-on contestation in 2026? If yes, on what basis? Now, I know other comrades have argued that we are in the government of national unity. We work with parties that have nothing to do, some of them, with what we stand for and represent. And many of them, some of them are very hostile to the National Democratic Revolution. Actually, they are part of the forces that we can define as counter-revolutionary forces. But we are in the GNU with them. They are not our allies. It's because the NEC took a decision that technically the only platform you can use at the moment to implement the National Democratic Revolution is through the formation of the government of national unity. Of course, that on its own would be determined by history. whether the decision we made last year, 5 years down the line, we will say was the best decision or not the best decision. I think it will be judged by history whether that position was the best position to come up with under the circumstances. But the fundamental issue is that the Communist Party is our ally. And when it goes toe-to-toe with the ANC, what then happened? Now, Comrade Chair, I want to conclude by saying, which is the last slide, that just to reinstate the point I was making earlier on, that the ANC strategic task, as I said, is to lead the national democratic revolution. And the Communist Party's, the SACP's strategic task is that of building a proletariat class, which is conscious, with that level of consciousness, that it is willing to stand up and advance the struggle for socialism. Whether that has been attained or not, it has to be a question that must be debated. Our own argument in the document is that it has not been attained. And therefore, the Communist Party may not in the position at the moment to say we're standing in order to achieve, we're contesting elections in order for us to implement socialism. We may not have that kind of awareness, consciousness on the ground for a position like that. And of course, the third one is the reconfiguration question, in our view, must not distort the distinct roles of the alliance partners. It must not be because there are difficulties in the implementation of the NTR. There are setbacks. The movement has been attacked by a counter-revolution, which has been debated to some extent, including in the NEC, which also can be seen in terms of what has happened to roll back the gains of the NTR over the past 10, 15 years. It must not be because we have had those setbacks and major challenges, therefore that we must act consciously to distort or to undermine or to lose respect, in fact, of what each one of the components of the alliance stand for and represent, or must stand for and represent rather. And of course, the future of the alliance, in our view, it will depend on clarity, on respect and cooperation. And that clarity has to be anchored on the ideological understanding of what the SACP represents historically and today, and what the ANC's position in that context. Because without that clarity and respect for each other's, for independent roles of these formations, we're going to run into a problem where the debate degenerates into personalities. I don't agree with this organization because I don't believe in so and so as a leader of the organization at that moment, or in this group of people as leaders of that particular organization. So it may very well be that there will be concerns about who leads which of the formations of our alliance. But that must not make us lose sight on the fundamental issue of what each of these components essentially represent in the struggle in our country. And of course, Comrade Chair, that also has to do with the fact that we must have that mutual recognition of the importance of sustaining the unity while addressing ideological differences. Because from time to time, this debate is not new. It has been there for over years after 1994. But there was always a way in which the leadership prevailed over addressing whatever differences exist in order to ensure that we manage areas of divergence which are anchored on ideological differences. And I want to conclude, Comrade Chair, by saying we are of the view that this paper, this document that we're contributing in the country as part of the national discourse would be one of the helpful intervention to trace back where the alliance come from, to understand why in the first place we have the ANC and its mandate, to understand why in the first place we have the Communist Party and its mandate. So that when we act in whatever way, whether as ANC or the Communist Party, we do so fully conscious of the consequences of the decisions that we're taking, because we have a full appreciation of who we are, what we stand for, and what we've stood for historically, and how we should advance that which we stand for in the current conjuncture. Thank you very much, Comrade Mshenge. And my apology for the glitches of having to drop here and there. As I said earlier on, this is a very long document which I wanted to try and summarize within an hour, as you said, so that you can allow comrades to reflect. And maybe more reflections would be helpful after comrades have read the document, which I believe is already in circulation. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Comrade Ntuli, for that presentation. As we indicated, comrades, we will request the President to also make his own remarks before we take discussions. And I also want to indicate that immediately after the President has made his remarks, Comrade Ravi Pillay will take over to facilitate the discussions right up to the conclusion of this session. But for now, Comrade President, the platform is yours.
Thanks a lot, Comrade Chen. First of all, Comrade Chen, I'll be very, very brief because indeed, as you've indicated, the discussion that must follow is important part of our evening. But first of all, Comrade Chen, let me say congratulations for what you've done in your role as a political head, because we've had here a political school of almost 500 participants. I think that's a very, very good thing, that they have so many comrades who are willing to participate in an important political process of this kind. Really, congratulations. And thanks to all the comrades who have attended. The second thing I'd like to say, Comrade Chair, is that I think we will need to find time to allow comrades to read the document that Comrade Dua has presented, because as I listen, it's a very, very important lesson in terms of Marxism, you would describe as a very detailed look at elements of historical materialism. It's in that sense a very scientific approach to this, for instance, this question: what's the difference between a democratic revolution and a socialist revolution? And in our context, we say the ANC leads the democratic revolution, and obviously the Communist Party would lead the socialist revolution. A discussion of that question is very important. And what Comrade Ntuli and the other authors of the document, Geraldine and Lennox, really, I think they've done a very, very good job in taking us back into this discussion of historical materialism, which normally is a discussion among members of the Communist Party. But I think for the rest of us, not in the Communist Party, it's very important to understand the approach of Marxism-Leninism to this issue of the relationship between the National Democratic Revolution and the Socialist Revolution. And I think the presentation that has been made is very important in that regard. It's got a section, I saw in the document, which even raises this question: on what basis do we say the ANC leads the National Democratic Revolution? A discussion of that question. It's covered in the document as I saw it, when the document was being shown before we came to the slides. And on what basis do we say the ANC leads the National Democratic Revolution? As part of the reason I'm saying, Comrade Chair, it's important that all of us really study the document which the three comrades have presented, and M2 was presenting just now. Also very important to understand this point, that the Communist Party is a party of socialism. Its historic task is not to lead the democratic revolution. Its historic task is to ensure the victory of the socialist revolution. Now, it's very important to understand that, because in understanding that, in the context of this historical materialism I'm talking about, I think the comrades are correct to say, once the democratic revolution emerged victorious politically in 1994, there was no reason why the Communist Party could not say to its allies, comrades, you know very well, we are a party of socialism. Our task, our historic task, is to bring about the victory of the socialist revolution. And therefore, now that we have completed part of the task of national liberation, at least the political part of it, now we think we can move over now as a party of socialism into the area of struggling for the victory of the socialist revolution. Now, there would have been nothing wrong with the Communist Party taking a position of that kind, historically, theoretically, from any point of view. And so even now, I think the point is made correctly by the comrades. If, for instance, the Communist Party, when I must say if, since the Communist Party has taken a decision to campaign for election on its own, the question that is being raised by the comrades is correct. Will it campaign as a party of the National Democratic Revolution, or will it campaign as a party of socialism? There are two very different positions. If it campaigns as a party of the National Democratic Revolution, it is then challenging directly the ANC. It's intervening in this political space in order to challenge the ANC. And therefore, by definition, this means a confrontation between these two as they struggle to communicate to the population. As campaigners of the ANC in a situation of like that, would have to say, but to the people, don't vote for this SACP, vote for the ANC. If the SACP stands as a party of National Democratic Revolution. But if the Communist Party said, we are going to stand as a party of socialism, and we want the population to vote for us in support of the victory of the socialist revolution, the ANC can't object to that. That intervention of the Communist Party would not be an intervention against the ANC. It would be an intervention in favor of the socialist revolution. So it's a very important thing, Comrade Chair, to understand this proposition, which I think was very effectively made by the comrades, led by the presentation made by Ntuli on behalf of the other comrades, to understand this difference between a democratic revolution and a socialist revolution, and where historically South Africa is today. And I hope there are members of the SACP who are part of this discussion. Maybe they can contribute. The issue that is raised, which comes from the Communist Manifesto, of the proletariat as a class, a proletariat for itself. A proletariat for itself means it's a proletariat that fights for the victory of rule of government by the proletariat. What distinguishes a socialist revolution? What distinguishes socialist revolution is exercise of political power by the working class. No, not nationalization and all this. It's political power in the hands of the workers. That happens when the working class is so organized, but it's a working class for itself. Acting for itself, it fights for the victory of the socialist revolution. I think the assessment the communists are making that in our country, the working class is nowhere near getting to that position where it says, we, the working class, are ready, or a class for itself, what a proletariat as a class, in the way that the Communist Manifesto talked about this, and therefore we're ready for this. We're not anywhere near there. What the Communist Party should do to prepare the masses of the people and the proletariat for that is a task that the Communist Party must explain. But the point is this. But the Communist Party can tomorrow say we are campaigning for the victory of the socialist revolution, and we want to convince the masses of our people that the cure to all of the ills that our country suffers from, the cure is socialism. They can say that, and the ANC can't disagree with them on that. That's their view. But I'm saying if they say we're going to campaign as a party of the National Democratic Revolution, and they've been doing so to challenge the ANC. You see, it's very good that the comrades discuss the matter about the nature of the tripartite alliance. And really, the reconfiguration that the Communist Party has been talking about for many years, it's not new. We opposed this posture of the ANC many years ago, because the reconfiguration it visualizes is the formation of a new political center, which will replace the ANC, the party, what they brought. It's a new center, which now becomes our political decision maker. This thing called a reconfigured alliance. We can't agree to that. We can't agree to a situation where the leader of the democratic revolution gets subjected to some entity, which is this reconfigured thing. But I'm saying it is important to discuss all of those issues. It starts with a proper understanding of this effective presentation by the comrades of what's the relationship of the socialist revolution to the democratic revolution. What is the historic attitude of the communist parties of the world towards this relationship between national liberation and socialist revolution? It be very, very important, Comrade Kwasi, that I think we should give comrades enough time to go through this document, because to do all of this will help us to understand correctly this relationship between national democratic revolution and the socialist revolution, and therefore the positions of the Communist Party relative to the other allies. And in the end, what is necessary is that there must be unity of all of the progressive forces in pursuit of the national democratic revolution. That has to happen. And the Communist Party would like the Communist Party to be part of that. The Communist Party is perfectly at liberty to engage in struggle in promotion of the socialist revolution. It can do that and at the same time support the furtherance of national democratic revolution. It can do both. An engagement between the ANC and the Communist Party along these lines becomes important. And there might be differences. The Communist Party might have a different view on these historical materialist issues. But I think the position presented by the three comrades on this issue is correct. And I do hope, Comrade Chair, that in the end, you'll give enough time to comrades to look at this and indeed perhaps persuade the authors of the document to have a second session of this political school to discuss what needs to be discussed, because if we look at the time now, there clearly is not enough time to enable an effective discussion on this. And I think a second session, after comrades have read the documents, would be very useful. But I say thanks a lot to Comrade Mdu, Geraldine, and Lennox for the document and the presentation. And again, Comrade Chair, thanks a lot for bringing so many comrades together. As I say, almost 500, for what is a very important political discussion. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much, Comrade. Over to you, Comrade Ravi.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Comrade President, Comrade Mdumiseni, Comrade Geraldine, and I'm not sure Comrade Lennox is still is on the call. I think the first point I'd like to make before I deal with the task that has been given to me is to say that this session is for me evidence that our renewal is real. And we are going back to our historic way of doing things. So thank you to the team. Now, when Comrade Mshengu sent me a message to please facilitate this session, I asked him, how much time do we have? What's the timeline? And he said 8 o'clock. Now, that would give us 25 minutes, subject to what Mdumiseni might say about his availability. Against that, we have the, I think, very sound advice by Comrade President that comrades should be given time to study the document and then have a session on a more considered, informed basis. Now, so I'm in a bit of a jam as to how to take this forward. Comrade President mentioned, and I think I recorded, that we went up to 492 people, and we're now at 489. So if we had to even try to open the discussion, I think we can anticipate the challenges that we might have. But I am inclined to suggest that since we have 25 minutes, that if we could use 15 minutes of that to get some input from some comrades, and then leave 10 minutes for Comrade Mdumiseni, and if the leadership is still around, or collective responses, unless there is an inclination to extend the time. I'm not going to open up that up from discussion. I'm just going to ask Comrade Mdumiseni, since he was coordinating the leadership side, what he thinks is a reasonable time frame.
No, thanks, Comrade Rav, and good evening to you. I would support what you are saying, that maybe between now and 8 o'clock, we can allow few interventions. We will also not necessarily be coming back with a very detailed, conclusive conclusion, because I think the President is quite right. The document is very lengthy. Comrades do need time to look at it, critique it, and then we debate again. So I go along with your suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Mdumiseni. So we're going to go that route, comrades. So I'm going to invite a few hands and can we agree that those who are requested to or invited to speak will limit themselves to 2 minutes, because we just want to get a first take on it, so to speak. It'll be impossible to get into any detail. So within that framework, can I then invite hands, comrades? Can I also ask Comrade Ntuli and the team to make sure that others are muted while those who are invited to speak do so? Now, I hope I can pick up here on the screen those whose hands are going up. I'm not seeing any hands yet. I am tempted to...
There's plenty, Comrade Ravi.
Hands, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's not reflecting on my... Oh, yes. Okay, I see it now. Thank you. Okay, so can we then invite Comrade Sandile Shabalala?
Thanks, Comrade Ravi. Good evening to all the comrades, in particular the President, members of the NEC, the chairpersons, and all the comrades in the meeting. For the sake of time, I'm not going to dwell on the greetings. Comrades, firstly, let's appreciate the engagement that has happened today and appreciate all the inputs that have been made, at least the 2 that have been made so far. I want to concur with President Thabo Mbeki when he says we need to discuss this document further. But I want to suggest that engagements of this nature should be more frequent, comrades. The reason for that is going to make us understand, as members of the African National Congress and members of the alliance partners, what actually is happening, so that we are able to firstly engage other people who are speaking of the organization, but also defend positions that get to be taken by the ANC and by the alliance partners where needs be. But I also recommend that the discussions today be taken not only to classes of this nature, taken to lowest levels possible. Remember, there are comrades who still need to understand some of the languages. When you say Leninist, Marxist, they don't have the entire understanding of what you're talking about. So for them to be able to defend or discuss they need all this to be unpacked for them. I think that is one of the most important things for us to state. Lastly, I want to, comrades of the NEC, lately it becomes difficult for us to say who in the NEC is speaking on behalf of the NEC, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry has a right, has a responsibility to speak, and says the ANC says. So ANC positions must be able to be communicated by the right people at the right time in the right platforms, so that the ANC is not seen as a confused organization as it appears now. Lastly, comrades, may all these engagements take place at least until after the local government elections, so that it's not seen as us trying to lure people to vote the ANC and afterwards we dish them and let them just go like that. Because of time, comrades, I'm going to stop at that. There is so much one would have loved to say, including that there are progressive professionals in the country, but they feel neglected for one or other reason. Some reasons are known to some of the comrades in the branches and in the regions. Can we also change that aspect? Thank Comrade Ravi for the opportunity and all that we've learned today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Sandile, both for the input and the discipline with regard to time management. Let's maybe also just record that this is a program of the Political Education Subcommittee, KZN. So it's a space where we discuss, express our views. So it's not necessarily a reflection of some official position, so to speak. And that's just to encourage the freedom of speech and thought on these matters. Secondly, Comrade Tugelo, I take it that the process is the event is being recorded firstly, and that you'll be able to capture all those comments that are made on the chat group so that it then goes into any consolidated report, so to speak, of this political education class, if I may call it that. Okay, then let's go to Comrade Zakes, Comrade Dr. Zakele Buthelezi.
Good evening, comrades, and good evening to the leadership. I also would want to just put a few things to the discussion. The first thing that we must know is that the SACP has always treated the NDR as a direct route to socialism. So there's nothing new in that. Through the NDR, because the NDR represents a progressive change in society, and socialism is viewed as being progressive. The SACP sees that as a step towards socialism. So there will always be contestation, therefore, from the SACP side on the character of the NDR as to whether it will be able to deliver socialism at the end of the day. But I think communists have generally understood that the struggle for socialism will be led by the Communist Party. What I think is more important in this discussion about the SACP going it alone or contesting elections on its own is that what is missed, I think, from the discussions both within the ANC and the SACP is the point at which we are as revolutionary forces, because both the ANC and the SACP represent revolutionary forces. Now, what has not been properly evaluated, and I think what would be the greatest mistake of this decision, is that generally the balance of forces, as we have seen, is against all progressive forces, not only within South Africa, but almost globally. And I think that's one thing that should inform, because we shouldn't be pedantic, but we should be pragmatic. That should be what informs whether we can divide forces at this moment, or we need to rally together to pursue progress in society. So that's my contribution, comrades. Thanks.
Thank you, Comrade Zakes. Can we go to Comrade Sifiso, Comrade Dr. Sifiso Gwala?
Thank you, Comrade Ravi. Greetings, Comrade President, and all comrades. I think in the interest of time, let me thank you for this opportunity. I think Comrade Zakes and Comrade President cover me, then I think at this point, it's going to be very important to concentrate on where we are agreeing. The danger currently is to actually look at just one decision that the SACP has taken lately that has actually led to this argument. So I think Comrade President has covered very well that the SACP has consistently put the reconfiguration of the alliance on the table. And the ANC has outright rejected it over the years up to this point. And it becomes very important historically to be able to actually evaluate that and be able to come to this point. I think what Zakes is raising is very important for me. The SACP needs a strong ANC at this particular moment. And that's why the SACP continues to reaffirm the significance of the alliance at this moment. And I think for us, it's, I think this paper is opening a debate that should have started just after the SACP took its decision to actually contest the election. Because I think the danger that we are going to actually fall into is to speak past each other. And that is going to be very dangerous, and we do not have time. So it becomes very important for leadership to take leadership at this particular moment. For this alliance, for the SACP and the ANC, to come to the table and speak about these issues. For me, there are a number of issues that we should be starting to actually deal with. Members of the SACP are members of the ANC. We must be speaking about this dual membership. How are we going to manage these issues as the SACP is actually contesting elections next year? I think I hear Comrade Mdumiseni raising a number of issues that we must be able to speak about. And I think Comrade President clarifying between the NDR and a socialist revolution. For me, the most important thing is we need to actually take it down, and we need, I think, the NEC and the Central Committee of the party to take leadership on this issue. It will not help anyone to actually speak past each other. This is very significant. We've got an ANC at 40% nationally and an ANC at 17% in KwaZulu-Natal. And any discussion that is going past each other is going to weaken us very further. And I think for me, it's very, very important that we manage this. We must not be careless about these discussions. It is a decision because I think for me, we must not just deal with symptoms. We must deal with core issues so that we are able to come up with solutions. Because I think to be reckless is going to be very dangerous at this particular moment. And I support that. I think we should come back to this class, part 2 or part 3 of it, so that we really have time to actually exhaust discussion and issues. And I think this discussion can actually help in igniting this discussion at a national level. I think last point that I want to make is the party raises one point, which is very important, that there are members of the SACP who are in parliament, but the program that they are implementing, it is the program of the ANC. There is no member of the SACP who goes to parliament to implement any program of the SACP. So I think it becomes very important to deal with these pertinent issues, because the party in particular has never been in charge, but it has participated under the umbrella and the leadership of the ANC. And these are issues I think that we must be able to manage and be correct when we are raising them. Thank you, Comrade Ravi.
Thank you very much, comrades. Okay, let me just, as part of my time management duty, Let me then rule subject to one qualification that the last speaker will be Comrade Edwin Mkhize, right? So that takes us to, pardon me, yeah, roughly about, it's still a long list, comrade, so you have to stick to 2 minutes, please. And then subject to one qualification relates to, if we don't see a perspective coming from the Communist Party perspective as invited by the president, then I might invite someone who might be prepared to do so from that perspective. So let's then go to the next speaker, which is Comrade Lesego Masisi. Please stick to the 2 minute guideline, comrades. As it is, we'll still go beyond 8, but not much.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. I'd like to thank comrades of ANCKZN for creating this program in collaboration with the authors of the document, Comrade Geraldine, Comrade Ntuli, and the other Comrade Lennox, as well as the inputs provided by Comrade President Thabo Mbeki. Bubesila Setujwa. I want to, provide some inputs regarding this briefly, which I don't think were fully ventilated. I think, the issue of SAP and the ANC needs to come from a very correct historical interpretation, which goes back to this concept of NDR, when exactly it comes from, before it even came into the shores of the MDM. During the liberation movement, where exactly it comes from. We need to have that. That should be our point of departure. And then with regards to the SACP's response and its understanding of the NDR within the alliance context, particularly under liberal democratic framework of organizing governance in South Africa, which includes having, participation, because I think maybe the objective of ANC was not to become an institution of the state, as we see in China and, like that, as in line with the party, in order for us to transition towards socialism, because we have not really transitioned into a social democracy or a very advanced social democracy. I think that the objective of the ANC and the SACP accepting the ANC to be the leader of the alliance represented in government was for the ANC to transition towards a social democratic state, an advanced one, almost the likes of Sweden and so on, whereby the fundamental contradictions, class domination, poverty, inequality, and unemployment, within this broad church framework, membership framework within the ANC, it would have been easier for us to achieve that objective. Then the SACP later would come with the discussion to say the ANC would have to now allow the party to lead that front of contesting elections, direct participation in democratic processes of the country, in order for that stage of the NDR. Because I think now there's been a dissonance. The ANC was a thing, but the stagist approach to the NDR was the ANC achieves national liberation. We all agree on that. I think even the party should agree on that. The second one was the ANC. Maybe this is where now there's a bit of a disagreement between the SACP and the ANC. The ANC would, after the liberation, after achieving that national liberation, would consolidate the gains of that national liberation. And then the SACP would say that we would use that as a step towards socialism, as a direct route towards socialism, as was previously mentioned by some of our participants here. So I think that's where the contradiction comes, and this is where it should be framed, even in meetings and discussions with the ANC as the SACP. The ANC should say that our line is to consolidate the gains of our democracy. The SACP should, I hope, agree on that. And the SACP should say, but where do we manage this contradiction? We have tools that we learn in our political schools, such as tension and synthesis of opposites, which comes from that concept of unity and struggle of opposites. Within that ventilation of views, that battle of ideas of how do we take our country forward. But nonetheless, the SACP's position should not be ignored and said, no, the SACP is misbehaving. therefore we should vote for the ANC. I think such approaches, and I think I sensed a bit of a tendency from Comrade President along those lines, which is a common view within ANC structures. It must be a thing of the SACP should be given that space. And I think the terms of reference of how they're going to contest elections going forward should be discussed and well ventilated. It must not be a very basic thing to say the SACP is taking it alone from next year onwards. I think that would be also very reductionist on the side of the party, but as well as the ANC not really fully ventilating it in this line and with that frame of reference that I previously mentioned and that historical reference that is full. I think we will have a challenge within the alliance, which would obviously bifurcate our national democratic revolution and weaken it, therefore, in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade. I think you stretched your time limit. I don't want to start using the stopwatch, but I have been authorized to go to 8:30, and we want to give some of the leadership a chance to also say something in response, including Comrade Geraldine, I think. Okay, Comrade Sabelo Dingiswayo.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to colleagues. I think, Chair One, I really agree with the President that indeed we'll make a meaningful input on the discussion after we have read the document. But one, Chair, I think as we agreed that the SACP has always been of the view that the NDR is the most direct path to socialism, which we understand that once the ANC would have reached the NDS, which is characterized by non-racist, non-sexist, democratic, united and prosperous society, then the SACP would then take over and pursue socialism. Then the question comes, in the eyes of in the view of the SACP, have we reached the NDS? If the answer is no, why would then the SACP even consider going that? Then one will be forgiven, Chair, to think this is less about the revolution. And let me put that in context. Why I'm saying that. You would understand, Chair, that in our history, for instance, this question always comes up whenever there's a bit of a tension between the leaders of the SACP and the leaders of the ANC. To make reference, when the President Mbeki was the president towards 2007, the SACP raised the same thing. Immediately, they even said, without leaving out of them, they even said, had their preferred candidate lose in Polokwane, they would have taken SACP to contest in 2009. But when their preferred won, they neglected that view of contesting. Again, we are faced with asking then the question that, does this thing have anything to do with the revolution, or it has something to do with the egos of individuals? Because everything that would have agreed between the two alliances is that once the SACP would have achieved, the ANC would have achieved the NDS, then there will be no contest. ANC would have achieved its strategic goals of the NDS. Therefore, SACP will take over. Then what is this thing, knowing very well that we have not achieved the NDS, that then said, no, now SACP is ready to take over. But then I'm then saying that this document, I think it will serve better, Chair, in an alliance summit where the SACP and ANC in particular will be present to state their views, so that they can all clarify all these concerns before we take that. Because reality is that if the ANC, to answer the question, part of the question in the document, if the ANC and SACP, they contest separately in the next election, then we can't say after that contestation, those two are still in alliance. So I think, Chair, to do justice, let me end there so that I can give time to other comrades and also time to go through the document. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Comrade. Is it Comrade Sabelo? No. Yes, Comrade Sabelo Dingiswayo.
I just presented, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I don't know why you could take your hand down, please. Comrade Tumelo Pizzo.
No,
Comrade
thank
Tumelo
you very
Pitso.
much. Yes.
I think you'll see that the the team has put up a clock on the screen to guide you. Okay, go ahead.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity that I'm getting. I must say that a very interesting topic indeed. And I want to cut short the protocol that I must observe. I want to start off by saying that I saw on the notes there, so I want to build my point on the background statement that Marxist is making there, of saying that consistent with Marxist view, open quote, democratic republic is the nearest approach to the dictatorship of the proletariat, close quote. What is basically Marxist is saying is that the proletariat is the working class, So in the event that I'm going to paint a scenario that the working class in a certain company, obviously, they're going to dictate terms and conditions of the working environment. Let's say in the event that they need maybe some safety clothing. Obviously, they're going to dictate, terms and conditions, and obviously the company is going to oblige, they're going to do what the proletariat is saying, So here, when we bring it home to the topic at hand, obviously the proletariat being represented by SACP, So obviously over the past 30 years of the alliance of ANC, together with the other alliances, including SACP, obviously we have been doing what SACP has been saying, with regard to the social touch that the ANC has to do. There's been a social responsibility that under ANC government that ANC has been doing. There is houses, that get free services. Houses which are indigent. There is a social people who deserve to get social grants. So just to mention few, we have been doing that. So it's uncalled for SACP to now to resort to want to do away with the alliance, and they are misled and they are mistaken to think that if they are going to stand on their own independently, they are going to get support. They're going to be hit by a surprise, and I want to just in conclusion, I want to say that the SACP, they are like a son, who's going to desert his family, and after deserting his family, is going to leave everything that he has been benefiting. And after that, after he has gone out, that son is going to come back because of the challenges that they are going to find out there. So in conclusion, I'm saying that they don't want to be that son to now have to come back to the alliance, So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Comrade Pitso. I take it comrades have heard this new instrument that I've found, the bell, eh? So we'll get a warning bell, and after that, we'll leave it to your political consciousness to not exceed time. Comrade Given Sebey. Comrade Given Sebey. Going.
Yeah.
Oh,
am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, thanks, Chair. My contribution is quite brief. One thing that I seem to be quite dominant and not only in this group or this dialogue tonight, is that a significant percentage of ANC membership, and I think the leadership of the ANC in the country, I think does not take time to consider the political reasons that have led the SACP to decide to contest state power. I think there are justifiable political and, more importantly, economic reasons why the SACP has finally decided it needs to go it alone and contest state power in order that the workers in the country and their aspirations, their historic aspirations, become safer and defended. It's a political protest on the part of the SACP, and it's not the SACP alone in the country, but I think it's more important that political protest had to come from the SACP to say to the African National Congress that you are veering off the course and something has to give. And I think that's one part of the discourse the ANC is not taking into consideration. Instead, the ANC unfortunately blames the decision by the SACP to contest state power. But I'm appealing, in concluding, Chair, that the ANC must sit down, consider the political reasons that have led the SACP to decide to go it alone. Thanks.
Comrade Nkosi Tutile Bonga.
Thank you so much, Chair of the session. In the interest of time, I will align myself with the protocol that has been established, precisely because the stopwatch on the screen is very much intimidating. Chair of the session, I wish to invite the session to note first and foremost that the SACP has demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that it is committed to an ANC that is able to respond to the interest of its own motive forces of the revolution. It demonstrated this by reversing its own resolution to contest the 2024 national elections on the basis that capital and imperialist forces have organized themselves behind the objective of driving the ANC below 50%. Now, that in itself demonstrates in practical terms that the ANC, the SACP is prepared to work within the alliance. It is therefore a misconception that the SACP is deserting or divorcing the alliance. There is no such things. The reconfiguration of the alliance is on the basis of strengthening the alliance. And secondly, I wish to correct a misrepresentation of the organizational report of the SACP on the question of the character of membership. Now, it has been presented here that the organizational report of the SACP demonstrated that a very small minority of its membership is from the working class. That cannot be true. That particular report demonstrated that a very small minority of the membership of the SACP are workers. Now, it is in this context that it is important to note that there is a distinction and a difference between workers and the working class. Those are not the same thing, precisely because the working class, in fact, a class is defined and determined by how it relates to the means of production. Now, workers alone cannot be a class, but a strata within the working class. So now that particular report is talking about workers, not the working class. Majority of the membership of the SACP and the ANC itself are the working class. And in conclusion, because I would not be in a position to make all the points that I prepared to make, I agree that we need to reflect on the historical significance and basis of the NDR before it reached the shores of South Africa. And also, In this regard, it's also important to correct the misconception that the Native Republic thesis or the Black Republic thesis is not the basis of the formation of the alliance. Now, that is a misconception because it is noted, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the SACP must go back to, this was in 1928 in the 6th Congress of the Comintern. The SACP must go back to South Africa and identify a national liberation movement amongst the masses, specifically the African National Congress, adopt that particular organization and transform it into a revolutionary fighting organization. Now, the SACP there was given strict instruction to come back to South Africa and initiate an alliance with the ANC. Therefore, that particular resolution is a basis for the alliance. We must interrogate that further and not reflect it as if it is not the basis of the alliance. That would not be correct, comrades. Time doesn't allow me to deposit everything I would have loved to deposit. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, comrade. You can see the debate that's going to be interesting and contested. I think that's what is intended. Comrade Thebe Faku.
Yes, Chair, thank you so much. I am from the Eastern Cape. I saw this in one of the WhatsApp posters in one of our political WhatsApp chat groups here. And then I decided, let me join because of the substance of the topic that was publicized. And thank you very much. And I would like to greet the leadership of the subcommittee of political education of KZN, and also like to say thank you very much for them to open up this and let us also be part of it. And also I would like to greet the President TM, Molo Comrade. Comrade Chair, one thing that I'm observing, which I hope the organizers will take into consideration. I don't think it's going to be constructive to engage on this subject on a position of seeking to make the decision of the SACP as if it's a betrayal to the cause or the reason of existence of the alliance. I think it would be interesting if the organizers of this session could invite the party and maybe even COSATU, because this matter is affecting each partner of the alliance, so that in the next discussion, or maybe the second one after the next one, we can get the benefit of the party on the areas that we think perhaps the party has made a mistake on, or we seek clarities on. Otherwise, it's going to be a one-way stream engagement. The second point, Chair, I would like to state is to organizers in particular. It would be interesting if this could be collaborated throughout the country political education of provinces, so that it becomes a constructive political discussion rather than an impromptu and spontaneous discussion that is taking place generally on an important matter like this. The third one and the last one, Chair, I think when we come back next time, I think we are going to need to be honest as cadres of the movement to be pointing out why are we dealing with these kind of situations within the alliance, where some of the good comrades and some of those that have been within the ANC have suddenly found reasons to distance themselves in a way from the current cause of the ANC. We must also be honest ourselves to be able to point out those areas that the ANC itself is kind of deviating or is perceived to be deviating from what is expected of it as a leader of the National Democratic Revolution, because the leadership of the ANC in the NDR is not for the ANC itself, but it is for the society broadly in alliance with other organizations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. You stretched it a bit, but
yes, I noticed.
Comrade, his name is gone. I thought I saw a Comrade Kefense.
Yes,
okay, let's go to
see my name. Right.
Okay,
yes,
go ahead.
See my name. Thank you very much. Let me also welcome the presentation that was made by Comrade Mdumiseni and Ntuli, as well as the inputs from the former President Thabo Mbeki, as well as some of the inputs that have been already made. I just have two quick comments to make in the form of questions, right? To say, clearly it has been established that the best path towards a socialist order is through the National Democratic Revolution. And my question then becomes, is the SACP taking this decision simply because it's not satisfied with the pace in which the revolution is being advanced? Or is it taking the position because it believes that the ANC is no longer an appropriate leader of the National Democratic Revolution? Or thirdly, is it taking this position because if it believes that indeed the ANC is not an appropriate leader, therefore it no longer is no longer able to bear the position of being the leader of the alliance, and therefore it has to be replaced either by itself or someone in the alliance? I think former President tried to speak to this issue around the strategic center of the alliance. So my first comment is around that, to say, in relation to the National Democratic Revolution, before we even get to the socialist one, what are the SACP's key concerns with regard to that? And have those concerns been clearly articulated? Now, my second comment has to do with the question of, even if, let's say, we were at a point where we were all satisfied about the pace of the National Democratic Revolution, or the SACP had taken this decision earlier on, as argued in the paper, that the SACP could have immediately taken this position post the apartheid era, right in 1994, to pursue a socialist revolution. So in that instance, wouldn't that have affected the alliance even then? So the question I'm asking is that, even now, if the SACP was to say, we are taking this position simply because we want to advance a socialist revolution, wouldn't that still put us in a position where we are having this debate about the alliance? And if not, what is the timeline really, to say, the timeline and maybe even the target, to say, when we get to the stage of the NDR, then the SACP would be allowed to pursue its revolution. And therefore, what does that mean for the alliance? So I'm saying we should have that discussion so that it is not a periodic discussion, but it's a principled discussion to say, at any point, it doesn't matter where we are, when the SACP decides to take a position to contest elections as part of the alliance, what does it really mean for the alliance and more broadly for the motive forces? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Comrade. Let's go to Comrade Nkosinati Jikeka. Comrade Nkosinati, are you still here? You are here, but you're muted.
I'm here, my
Right.
comrades.
Right, go
Thank
ahead.
you very much. Thank you very much, Comrade Chairperson. Firstly, I just want to, well, I echo the appreciation of the presentations by everybody and the inputs by all the comrades. Secondly, to appreciate the input by Comrade Thabo Mbeki, at least in saying the SACP should contest elections in favor of socialism. But just a few nuances which would also problematize some of the issues Comrade TM himself raised. The democratic revolution, yes, in our country got codified in terms of ANC leading it and SACP leading the second stage. This has been a contested issue amongst Marxists since the Communist International Resolution, both on the democratic revolution and in relation to the socialist revolution. I also want to say Lenin, in relation to the democratic revolution in Russia, argued that it must be led by the working class and by the party of the working class. And that was the basis of that revolution becoming uninterrupted or continuous, leading to socialism. So the democratic revolution is not an exclusive preserve of the democratic forces per se, which in our case, the ANC is. Remember, even in our country, there was a discussion as to whether the NDR or National Democratic Struggle, as it was at some point called, should be led by the ANC. There was an argument amongst us that, look, it should be led by the Communist Party, the democratic struggle itself, in order to lay the fertile ground for an uninterrupted revolution to socialism. That's where I then take issue with Comrade Thabo, in as much as I'm happy with his view that the party, yes, must contest elections in favor of socialism. But the question he posed, that the ANC leads the democratic revolution, I also draw his attention to the discussions within the Communist International, including the SACP itself, that actually for the democratic revolution, or the NDR in our case, to be completed and therefore lay the basis for a transition to socialism, the Communist Party leading the proletariat should lead the democratic revolution. I just wanted to raise those points, but once again, I salute Comrade Thabo Mbeki that at least he has raised issues, even the SACP. The SACP I belong to has been afraid of raising, right, in relation to the struggle for national liberation and for socialism. Thank you, comrades. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, comrade. A passionate input. Okay, I see we've lost some names, but apologies. I see we've lost some hands, but that helps my manage my time. Comrade Edwin, you're the last speaker from the floor, and then we'll conclude. I'll come to that just now. Comrade Edwin.
Thank you very much, Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity. I want to greet the former president, Comrade TM. It's always very important and honor to engage with him. Let me greet also Comrade Mdumiseni, yourself, Chair, and all the comrades that I have attended this engagement. Chair, I really, Comrade Nkosinathi, the one that just spoke before me, has actually covered me. Because I really have, I just wanted to engage the issue of separating the democratic revolution and the socialist revolution. Because sometimes some of us, we get lost on the somewhere, Chair, because our understanding, the spirit of the Communitarian and the Black Republic thesis, you can't actually separate, especially when you talk about the South African Communist Party. You can't separate the democratic revolution and the struggle for socialism, because in the what you call the view of the Communitarian, these are intertwined. The SACP is for the struggle for democratic revolution as well as for struggle for socialism. So I think that has to be corrected, because if it's not corrected, really, it will give us some problem. But maybe the other problem that I have, it tends to locate the ANC somewhere. It tends to locate the ANC. We used to be told that ANC, it was an organization and a party for clergy, men, the priest, the traditional leaders, that was just concerned about inclusion, not about the whole question of class. And therefore, now this, therefore, it tends to locate the ANC into exactly that kind of the definition. And it gives me a bit of a worry if you look at some of the strategy and tactics of the ANC, where the working class is sometimes defined as a motive force. And therefore, it brings to a question whether the ANC has a serious problem, has a problem with socialism. And if ANC has a problem with socialism, what does that then mean? Because I think we should be discussing that now what should be the transition, because we have achieved our democratic dispensation in 1994. Then post 1994, what should be a transition for a full liberation and freedom of South African people? And I used to think that therefore socialism as a system is a system that can actually address the imbalances of the past and try to bring some transformation in creating the better life for all. So the question, Chair, because you're going to stop me now, I can't raise all the issues, but is the ANC really have a serious problem with socialism as a system? I think that I will end there, maybe in the near future, because I agree with Comrade TM that we need to have this engagement in the near future. We need to take it forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Kabazela. Very rich input and stirring the debate further. Comrade, we come to the end of our list, and I'm glad we were able to accommodate everyone. Now, I just want to make the point before I ask Comrade Mdumiseni and the team that it's important that we stick to time, you see, because sometimes we lose people. And we're sitting at now 402 people, and it would have been good if all 490 odd would have been here for closing remarks. But we have agreed we're going to take this further. So on that basis, I'll invite Comrade Mdumiseni to just coordinate the responses. I think Comrade Geraldine, I'm not sure if she wants to say, but I'll say anything. And then I'm not sure if former president is still around and wanting to say anything, but I'll leave you to coordinate those responses briefly. Comrade Mdumiseni?
No, thanks, Comrade Ravi. Thank you very much. And also, let me welcome on behalf of the drafting team for the document, all the inputs, very, very important inputs that were made by comrades here, including those that are intended to, which do not necessarily align with what the document says. It's a discussion document. And so it was expected that it must at least provoke a discussion. And I think in the context of that discussion, all of us will emerge better, because that is what we are required to be as revolutionaries or aspirant revolutionaries. Just to comment, Chair, maybe on 2 or 3 matters of substance that I think are worth being taken up. The first one is that there's a comrade who has said, well, part of the reasons, I'm paraphrasing him, that maybe there is a justification why the Communist Party should contest the elections. And he made references to political and economic reasons, and the fact that the two do not serve the interests of the working class. And so the Communist Party has to step up in order to ensure that it advances the interests of the working class. I think none of us will disagree with the position of the Communist Party in relation to its own historic mission, which is the socialist revolution. There's no problem with that. And even as drafters of this document, we are also not hostile or opposed to the idea that the Communist Party would be expected to advance its own historic mission. That is why I said, after 1994, immediately after 1994, if you read the Marxist literature, if you read it very carefully, you will recognize that after 1994, there were no theoretical basis why the Communist Party should not start in earnest for a journey towards a socialist revolution, including where necessary contesting the elections. Because at that time, as I was saying, and the document is making this point in a much more detailed way, the achievement of what the international communist had been achieved, in a sense. What the commitment had said to the Communist Party had to a larger extent been achieved in terms of universal suffrage and the creation of the native or the Black Republic, as was referred to in the Marxist language and the Marxist document. So I do want to make that point that when we critique the correctness of the decision now and whether or not it is feasible, we are not opposed to the Communist Party pursuing the struggle for socialism, but we are saying it must be understood as such, not as an intervention to co-govern the National Democratic Revolution. Because the ANC does not have a mandate to achieve a socialist revolution in South Africa. There's nowhere in the history of the ANC a reference is made to its own commitment to use the NTR as a pathway towards socialism. The ANC does not have that mandate as the African National Congress. So that's why I was saying there's no problem with the SACP taking up that issue. The second, and maybe one before the last one, the second issue, last 2 issues, in fact. Well, I note what one of our comrades was saying here, who I think disagrees with the point we were making. about the fact that the 1928 committed resolution had nothing to do with the formation of the alliance. Actually, that resolution, and I'm sure you comrades will read it, is in the document. It's not something that you will find it in the document. Yes, indeed, it does say that the Communist Party must pay attention to the African National Congress, and to the extent that it is possible, influence it into a particular direction. Does that mean becoming an alliance? No. It says pay attention to this organization, which at the moment is at the center of a struggle against colonialism and with an agenda towards the creation of, whether you call it a native or a black republic. But it doesn't say you are directed to form an alliance. Now, let's take the argument that that was a directive. Was it sufficient that the directive to the Communist Party on how it must relate with the ANC will therefore mean that the ANC itself is directed to work with the Communist Party in a way that would result in them being called an alliance? Our own view is that that is not what the Communist Party was saying. The Communist Party was giving that instruction in the context of what it did, not only for South Africa, but in other struggles that were taking place throughout the world, to say that there are certain conditions that must be met in order for you to lead effectively towards the struggle to achieve or for the attainment of the socialist revolution. But comrades will read the document. I think in the next discussion, we will be able to go deeper on that when comrades have read, and where they disagree, we will welcome the disagreements as well. The last point I want to say, Comrade Chair, is that I agree with Comrade Edwin that we probably need to strengthen our understanding of what is meant and what are the differences between a national democratic revolution and a socialist revolution. I think it's important that we need to spend time to look at that question and properly understand it, including its own motive forces. What are the motive forces of the socialist revolution? What are the motive forces of the national democratic revolution? To what extent the two relate to one another? And does any semblance of the relationship that may exist with one or two components of the motive forces of the two revolutions therefore suggest that the two revolutions are exactly the same? I think it's a conversation that I would suggest that we engage with beyond today, when we have an opportunity to discuss this matter. We would look at the matter relating to the difference between the working class and the workers in terms of the statistics contained on the report of the Communist Party. We will check that issue, and I'm sure when we come back, we will be able to engage and in the way that the comrade who raised that matter was raising, because our own understanding, as we've captured it in the document, is that the context of what has been made available on the information of the South African Communist Party. So, Comrade Chair, I think I want to leave it at that level. There wasn't any indication on the part of Comrade Geraldine and Comrade Klaas that they wanted to make certain interventions today. I think probably that would be an opportunity in future when the discussion continues, as I think it will be continuing this coming Sunday on a platform that is organized by the LWV, the Liberation War Veterans. I think Comrade Mshengu had said in the beginning, President was making comments after our presentation, Comrade Ravai. I'm also not aware that he has an intention to make any concluding remarks. Thank you very much, Comrade Rav.
Thank you, Comrade Mdumiseni, for the preparations and the inputs, and to the entire leadership team. I'm sure you will convey that to them. Just a quick comment that I didn't follow the chat group completely, but the two that I did pick up at two extremes. One was that, all these complicated terminology and isms confuse people. All they want is competent leaders. The other one at the other extreme is not other extreme, but other at another level was is the ANC still a disciplined force of the left, which I think is a relevant point as we take these discussions further. So thank you, Comrade Leadership, for this. I think you've initiated a very vibrant and focused discussion. Some will say in many ways we've scratched the surface, but I think we've certainly inspired and invigorated everyone. I think it's a long time since we, as the President has said, we've had such a large number participating. And I think in the planning of the next one, we must try to keep everybody till the end. The other point is at some point it's a KZN political education school, and at some point the KZN context and contradictions must also start to find expression in our discussion. But thank you. I think the intention is to take it countrywide, and that's going to be inspiring. So thanks again to the leadership. Thanks to Comrade Mshengu and the team who put it together. Thank you to all 492 delegates who joined at various points. And I see there's still 378 here. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you very much, comrades. It was a
Thank you, comrades.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, leadership.
Thank you, leadership.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, leadership.
Long live the chair.
Long live.